It all felt like it was over with that near slap, right there in the principal's office. Then, the door opened. An old man in a cashmere coat stepped inside, calmly placing a set of keys on the desk. Keys to an entire building. "Excuse me," he said, his voice quiet. "Who was about to lay a hand on my granddaughter?" From that second, everything in that school, and in my family, changed completely. My name is Delaney Rhodes. I'm 22, and for the next 6 months, I'm a senior in the communications program at Pinecrest State University. I also work 20 hours a week as a junior creative at a small agency, the Northline Creative Lab. Those are the facts. The reality is that I live in a house that stopped feeling like mine about a decade ago. Maple Ridge, Colorado, is beautiful in the way postcards are beautiful. We're nestled in a valley where the snow comes in early October and doesn't leave until late April. It blankets everything in a thick, sound-dampening white that makes the world feel quiet and still. But the beauty is cold. It seeps through the old window frames of our house, a rented 2-story that always smells faintly of dust and Trina's acidic floral perfume. The furnace in the basement groans like a dying animal, fighting a losing battle against the drafts. We keep the thermostat at 65, a non-negotiable rule set by my stepmother. Trina, my mother, the one who loved gardening and had a laugh that sounded like wind chimes, died when I was 10. Lung cancer, fast and brutal. My dad, Evan Rhodes, was a ghost for a year, and then he met Trina Halbrook. Trina was, and is, shiny, while the rest of us feel matte. Her hair is always a perfect, expensive shade of blonde. Her nails are long, manicured, and look completely out of place scrubbing a pot, which she rarely does. She is a master of emotional manipulation, a conductor of the family's mood. Her primary instrument is guilt, and her favorite target is me. I am, in her words, the one living off us. The fact that I am at Pinecrest State at all is a messy tangle of deferred tuition payments, a tiny academic scholarship that covers maybe half my books, and the paycheck from Northline that pays for my gas, my food, and my share of the utilities. I schedule my classes in brutal, back-to-back blocks so I can make it to the lab by 1 p.m. My days start at 6 a.m. and end well after midnight, hunched over textbooks at the kitchen table because my bedroom is too cold. Trina sees none of this. She only sees my presence as a drain on her resources. Resources she is carefully hoarding for her own daughter, Mia. My relationship with my father is like trying to tune in a distant radio station. There's just static. He's a good man, I think, but he's quiet, and his spine dissolved somewhere around the time my mother died. He avoids conflict at all costs. When Trina makes a cutting remark at the dinner table, "It must be nice, Delaney, getting to study all day while the rest of us worry about the mortgage," I'll look at him, and he will, without fail, find something fascinating on his plate. He'll clear his throat and ask Mia about her homework. He stands in the middle, which in our house is just a safer, slower way of leaning toward Trina. He is terrified of being alone again, terrified of another loss, and that fear makes him a bystander in his own home. My only way out, my only real chance, is a long shot. 3 months ago, during a late-night panic session about student loans, I found it. The Weston Fellowship. It was different. It wasn't some huge corporate grant. It was a private fund, started by some anonymous entrepreneur. The website was simple, almost old-fashioned. It said it was for students who had the drive, but not the means. Students from backgrounds where potential is often eclipsed by necessity. It was for me. I spent a week on the application. I poured every bit of exhaustion and hope and suppressed anger into those essays. I wrote about my mother. I wrote about my passion for documentary storytelling, for giving a voice to people who, like me, felt muffled. I hit submit at 3 a.m, my heart hammering. I told no one, not my dad, and especially not Trina. It felt like the only thing in my life that was truly mine. In our house, all financial decisions flow through Trina. She balances the checkbook with the zeal of a hawk, highlighting every expenditure. My dad hands over his paycheck, and she doles out allowances. Her one blind spot, her one area of lavish spending, is her 17-year-old daughter, Mia Halbrook. Mia is a senior at Maple Ridge High. She's not a bad kid, really. She's just Trina's. She has internalized Trina's narrative that the world owes her something, and that I am somehow in her way. Trina's entire universe currently revolves around Mia's college applications to expensive, out-of-state schools that I know. Factually, we cannot afford. This became painfully clear last month. My senior thesis is a documentary project. It's the single most important grade of my college career. My old point-and-shoot camera from high school wasn't going to cut it. For 6 months, I saved every single dollar I could. I skipped lunches. I stopped buying coffee. I sold old textbooks. I finally scraped together $400 and bought a used, but solid, DSLR camera from a kid in the year above me. I made the mistake of leaving it on the kitchen table. I came home from class, and Trina was holding it like it was a dead rat. "What is this?" she asked. Her voice was deceptively calm. "It's a camera, for my thesis project." "A camera," she repeated. "How frivolous, utterly frivolous." "I need it for school. Trina, I paid for it myself." "You paid for it?" She laughed. A short, sharp sound. "With what money, Delaney? The money you make at that job while living under our roof, eating our food? Do you have any idea what Mia's SAT tutoring costs? What the application fees are?" She shook her head. The picture of martyrdom. Some people just don't understand priorities. It's always about what you want, isn't it? I didn't argue. I just took the camera from her hand and went to my room. There is no winning. There is only survival. The first real crack, the one that set all of this in motion, happened last night. It was a Tuesday. The snow was coming down thick, piling in drifts against the windows. The house was cold. We were eating dinner, a watery stew that was heavy on potatoes and light on everything else. The tension was suffocating. Mia was complaining about her chemistry teacher. My dad was pushing a piece of potato around his bowl. Trina put her fork down. The click of metal on cheap ceramic was loud in the silence. "Delaney," she said. She used her reasonable, "I'm a concerned parent" voice. It's the one I hate the most. "I've been thinking about this upcoming semester. With Mia's applications and the early decision deadlines, this is a critical time for her. It really needs to be all hands on deck." I kept eating. "Okay. So, I've decided, it's best if you defer your spring semester." My stomach dropped. I looked up. "What?" "Defer," she said, nodding, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "Take the semester off. You can stay home. You can drive Mia to her interviews. You can edit her essays. You're good with words. It's the least you can do to contribute to this family, to her future." The air in my lungs turned to ice. Defer. My final semester. 6 months before graduation. 6 months before I was free. "No." My voice was barely a whisper. "I can't do that. Trina." "What do you mean? You can't?" Her eyes hardened. "It's 1 semester." "My thesis is due in May," I said, my voice getting stronger. "I have my internship at Northline. I'm graduating. I am not deferring." "That little lab job?" she scoffed. "Don't be dramatic, Delaney. This is family. This is Mia's future. We all have to make sacrifices." She turned her gaze on my father. "Evan, tell her how important this is." I swiveled to face him. My dad looked at me, his eyes wide and pleading, trapped. "Del, just think about it," he stammered. "Mia could really use the help. It would make things easier around here. Easier for you." I thought. The betrayal was a sharp physical pain. He wasn't supporting her. He was just trying to stop the yelling before it started. "No," I said, looking right at Trina. My hands were shaking, but my voice was level. "I am not pausing my life for Mia's applications. I will not do it." Trina's face went pale, then flushed a dark, angry red. The reasonable mask was gone. "You are living under my roof, young lady. You are eating my food. You will show some gratitude. You will do as I say, or you can find somewhere else to live." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the linoleum. "I have to study," I said, my voice thick. "We are not finished here. Delaney, you get back here." I didn't. I walked up the stairs to my room and locked the door. Her voice still echoing from the kitchen, I leaned my head against the frosted glass of the window, the cold seeping into my forehead. She meant it. She would kick me out. I had nothing, nowhere to go. Everything was riding on that fellowship. And here's the final, bitter twist of irony. The Weston Fellowship, I learned last week, wasn't just sending letters. They were on a commitment tour, visiting high schools to promote the program and inspire younger students. Their next stop, this Friday, is Maple Ridge High. I know this because my boss at Northline, Mark, got a contract to film the event, a simple, 2-camera shoot for the school's website and the local news affiliate. "Delaney," he'd said, "you know the school. You're great with the handheld. You can lead this." So my entire future won't be decided by a quiet letter in our mailbox. A letter Trina would undoubtedly intercept. It's going to be decided by an email, set to arrive on Friday morning. An email I will receive while standing in the very hallway where Trina is busy trying to launch her daughter's future by setting fire to mine. The air in Maple Ridge High School snapped with a specific kind of Friday energy. It smelled like industrial floor cleaner, stale pizza from the cafeteria, and the damp wool of winter coats. I had my Northline Creative Lab badge clipped to my jacket, and the weight of my own camera, the one Trina called frivolous, was solid and reassuring in my hands. My colleague, Noah Fields, was setting up the main tripod in the auditorium, preparing for the Weston Fellowship Assembly. "You good to grab B-roll, Delaney?" he asked, fiddling with a white balance card. "Just atmosphere, kids looking inspired, that kind of thing." "On it," I said, my voice sounding more normal than I felt. My stomach was a hollow knot of acid. My phone was in my back pocket, set to vibrate only for emails. I'd checked it 4 times since parking the car. Nothing. I walked the hallways, filming. I got shots of the lockers, the faded banners for the football team, the Weston Fellowship posters taped to the walls. I was just a professional, doing my job. That's what I kept telling myself. I saw them before they saw me. Trina and Mia were standing outside the guidance counselor's office, which was right next to the main administration. Trina was in a crisp, expensive-looking trench coat, her blonde hair perfect. She was holding a thick manila envelope, Mia's application packet. She was furiously smoothing Mia's hair, her movements sharp and proprietary. Mia just stared straight ahead, her face pale, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. I ducked into a small alcove by the trophy case. Turning my back, I couldn't face her. Not now. Not when my entire future was hanging by a thread that was supposed to snap today. I leaned against the wall, checking my phone again. And there it was. The vibration was long, sustained, not a text, an email. My fingers were numb, clumsy. As I pulled the phone from my pocket, "From Weston Fellowship Administrative Office. Subject, a decision regarding your application." My heart wasn't hammering. It felt like it had stopped completely. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, drowning out the sound of the class bell ringing. I tapped the screen. My eyes scanned the text. I wasn't really reading, just hunting for the keywords. "We regret to inform you," unfortunately, due to the volume. But those words weren't there. "Dear Miss Rhodes, on behalf of the Weston Fellowship Selection Committee, it is with profound excitement that we inform you that you have been selected as a 2025 Weston Fellow." The next words blurred. I had to squint to make them out. "Full tuition coverage for your final year at Pinecrest State University. A monthly living stipend of $2,500 to ensure your focus remains on your studies. And an additional $5,000 grant, earmarked specifically for the production costs of your senior thesis project. Silent hands." I couldn't breathe. My knees buckled. I slid down the wall until I was half sitting on the floor. The phone still clutched in my hand. I brought my camera up to my face, pressing the cold metal of the viewfinder against my forehead, and the tears just came. It wasn't a sob. It was a complete, silent, and total release of pressure. It was 6 months of rent. It was food. It was graduating. It was the end of Trina's primary weapon. It was freedom. Delaney? I flinched, wiping my face. It was Noah. He was standing a few feet away, his own camera lowered, a look of deep concern on his face. "Hey, are you okay? What's wrong? Did you get bad news?" I shook my head, which turned into a laugh, which was half a sob. I couldn't speak. I just held out the phone. He took it, read the first line, and his jaw dropped. "No way," he read it again. "Holy, Delaney, the full ride, the stipend, the $5,000 for your project?" He thrust the phone back at me. His face split in a massive grin. "This is insane." He lifted his camera instantly, the red rec light blinking on. He was filming me. "Noah, stop," I laughed, trying to hide my tear-streaked face. "No way, man," he said, his voice giddy. "This is the real story. This is the moment. A local student, here on the day of the event. This is gold." "What is all this commotion?" The voice was like a bucket of ice water. "Trina." She was standing there, arms crossed, Mia hovering a few feet behind her. Her eyes darted from my red face, to Noah, to the camera pointed at me. Her expression was one of pure, undiluted suspicion. Noah, sensing the shift, lowered his camera. "We're just celebrating. Delaney just got some really good news." "Oh?" Trina's gaze locked onto me. "And what news would that be?" I stood up, my legs still shaky. I wiped my face on my sleeve. I would not let her make this small. "I was just informed," I said, my voice as steady as I could make it, "that I've been awarded the Weston Fellowship." I watched her face. It was a fast, terrible series of micro-expressions. First, blank confusion. She'd assumed it was some small-town scholarship. Then, dawning comprehension as she connected it to the banners in the hall. And finally, her face just froze. The fake, bright smile she wore in public became a mask. It was all teeth. "The Weston Fellowship?" she repeated. "The one they're holding this entire assembly for?" "Yes." She let out a brittle laugh. "Well, isn't that nice?" She turned to Mia, reaching out to fix her collar. "I guess a little luck goes a long way. Or maybe it's just knowing the right tricks." The implication was immediate and sharp. I had cheated. "It wasn't luck. Trina," I said, my voice cold. "It was a blind review process based on my portfolio, my grades, and my essays. It's fully transparent." "Of course it is, dear," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. She gave Mia's shoulder a squeeze, but her eyes were on me. "Don't you worry. Mia, sweetheart," she said, just loud enough for all of us to hear. "Some people just have a knack for grabbing the spotlight, don't they? We're here for your future. We have to stay focused on what's important." She was gassing Mia up, painting me as the villain who had stolen something. Before I could reply, the door to the principal's office opened. A woman I recognized as the office secretary poked her head out. "Delaney Rhodes? Is Delaney Rhodes out here?" "I'm here," I said, stepping forward. Her face lit up. "Mr. Corbett, the principal. He just got the call from the Weston reps. He's ecstatic. He wants to see you in his office, right now. He wants to congratulate you." Noah gave me a shove. "Go. This is huge. I'll get the assembly. Go." I felt like I was floating. I gave him a grateful look and walked toward the office. I heard the tap-tap-tap of heels on the linoleum behind me. Trina was following me. Mia was trailing reluctantly behind her. "Trina, you don't need to come." "Nonsense," she said brightly. "This is a family matter. We are all so proud of you." Mr. Corbett's office was warm and smelled like coffee and old books. He was a portly man with a kind, stressed face, and he was absolutely beaming. "Delaney, come in. Come in. Congratulations. This is just wonderful news. Wonderful. A Pinecrest student winning this, and on the day of our event. We're so proud. We'd love to put this on the school's homepage, right away." "Thank you, Mr. Corbett. That's very kind. And, Miss Halbrook, Mia, you're here for your counseling appointment?" he asked, his smile faltering slightly as they followed me into the small space. "We are," Trina said, taking charge. She positioned herself right beside me, a supportive arm around my shoulder that felt more like a vice. "We were just in the hall when Delaney got the news. We are just overwhelmed." "Well, it's fantastic," he said. "It is," Trina agreed. Her smile tightened, which is why, as her family, we just have a few questions about the process. This is a very significant financial award. After all, we feel it's our right to review the application she submitted. The air in the room went still. Mr. Corbett blinked. I'm sorry?" "The application," Trina repeated slowly, as if to a child. "The essays, the financial disclosures. As her father and I are still her primary residents, we have a legal right to see what was represented in her name, to make sure it's all accurate. She was accusing me of lying, right here, right in front of the principal." My stomach turned to lead. "I am 22 years old," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You have no legal right to my private application." "Mr. Corbett," I said, turning to him, "my application is confidential. It's between me and the fellowship." Mr. Corbett nodded, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Ms. Halbrook, Delaney is correct. She's a legal adult, and the Weston Fellowship is a private entity. The school has no access to those documents, and even if we did, we could not release them to a third party." "A third party?" Trina's voice rose, shedding its polite veneer. "I am her mother. She is using our family name, our address, to solicit money. We have every right to know what she said about us." She was cornered. This wasn't about protecting the family name. It was about her losing control. It was about me getting $5,000 for my frivolous project. When she saw Mr. Corbett wouldn't budge, she pulled out her phone. "This is unacceptable," she announced. She jabbed at the screen. "Evan needs to be here. He needs to handle this." "Trina, don't," I said. "Don't call him." She ignored me. She hit the call button and, to my horror, put it on speaker. The tinny sound of the phone ringing filled the tiny, silent office. Through the glass wall of the office, I could see Mia. She hadn't come in. She was standing outside by the trophy case, pretending to read the plaques, but her eyes were glued to us. I couldn't read her expression. It was a painful, confusing mix of what looked like admiration and deep, burning resentment. "Evan Rhodes," my father's voice, small and distant. "Evan, thank God," Trina said, her voice full of manufactured panic. "I'm here at the high school. It's Delaney." What's wrong? Is she hurt? Is Mia okay?" "Mia is fine. It's Delaney. She's apparently won some large fellowship, a lot of money, and she's here in the principal's office, refusing to let anyone see the application she filed. She's telling them her family has no right to see it." A heavy sigh on the other end of the line. "Trina, I'm at the shop. The transmission on the F-150 is in pieces." "I don't care about the F-150, Evan. Your daughter is using our family name to get money. God knows what lies she told about our finances or about me. You need to get down here and sort this out. She's making a scene." "Del, what's going on?" he asked, his voice weary. "Dad, I won the Weston Fellowship. It covers everything." Honey, that's great. But just show Trina the papers. You know how she gets. Just make it easy." Make it easy. The story of my life. "No," I said. My voice didn't shake. "I'm not showing her. It's private." "Evan, did you hear that?" Trina shrieked. "You get down here now and handle your daughter." She clicked the phone off, ending the call. She crossed her arms. a look of grim triumph on her face. She had summoned her enforcer. My father would arrive, he would capitulate, and he would try to force me to do the same, all in the name of keeping the peace. The air in the office was so thick I could barely breathe. Mr. Corbett was looking at his desk, at the ceiling, anywhere but at us. "He shouldn't have to come here," I said. "Well, he is," Trina snapped. I took a deep breath. The adrenaline had burned away, leaving a strange, cold calm. I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was it. This was the moment my life pivoted. "Mr. Corbett," I said, my voice clear and professional. "I apologize for this interruption. I know you're busy." "It's quite all right, Delaney." The Weston Fellowship representative, Ms. Grant, is scheduled to arrive here in 15 minutes to meet with me and with you. I will be here, in this office, to meet her as planned. I turned and looked directly at Trina. I am not deferring my semester, and I am not backing down. Trina's face went white with rage. She saw the new lines being drawn. She saw her power, the power of the provider, evaporating in real time. She took a step toward me, her hand raising. "You ungrateful little—" Trina's face didn't just get red. It collapsed. The mask of the concerned suburban mother dissolved, revealing something raw and furious underneath. "You ungrateful little—" she started, her voice a low hiss, the word I'd heard my whole life, the one she used when Dad wasn't home, the one she spat like poison, finally came out in public. "Leech." She took that last step, her hand, the one with the perfect manicure, swung up and back, ready to arc across my face. It didn't connect. It never even came close. A blur of motion from the doorway. A firm, dark-uniformed arm shot out and clamped around Trina's wrist mid-air. "We do not do that here, Mrs. Halbrook." The voice was calm, deep, and held the absolute zero of inflexibility. It wasn't Mr. Corbett. It was Ms. Patel, the school's head of security. She was a woman built of compressed energy, a former military police officer whose presence usually just meant kids were vaping in the bathrooms. She must have been standing in the outer office, monitoring the argument from the moment Trina's voice had risen. Trina gasped, a sound of pure shock and indignation, trying to yank her arm free. Ms. Patel did not release her. She held the wrist in a grip that was clearly trained, applying just enough pressure to control, not to harm. It was impersonal. It was procedure. "Let go of me!" Trina shrieked, her face mottling with humiliation. "When you are calm," Ms. Patel stated, her voice never rising. Simultaneously, a sharp, electronic beep, beep, beep sounded from the wall panel by Mr. Corbett's desk. It wasn't the roaring whoop of a fire alarm. It was high-pitched, digital, and internal. Mr. Corbett jumped, startled, and then his face went grim. "That's the safe room alert," he said, his voice strained. "Ms. Patel, is that necessary?" "The potential for physical contact by a non-student adult on school property initiated the protocol, sir," Ms. Patel said. She released Trina's wrist, but only to position herself squarely between us, a solid wall in a black polo shirt. Trina stumbled back, rubbing her arm, her eyes wide with fury at being touched, at being managed. Then, a heavy metallic thunk echoed from the hallway. The door. It was a magnetic soft lock. We weren't trapped. The lock was designed to prevent escalation from the outside. The protocol wasn't just to stop the fight. It was to contain the threat. And the system, the school's billion-dollar security system, had just identified the threat. It was Trina. Mr. Corbett stood up, planting his hands on his desk. The kindly, stressed administrator was gone, replaced by the man legally in charge of the building. "All right, everyone, stop. This office is now under a temporary security hold." He looked shaken but was shifting into gear. He grabbed a thick, laminated binder from his shelf and flipped it open, his finger tracing a line. He was actually reading from it, his voice shaking only slightly. "Per the Maple Ridge District Code of Conduct, Section 4, Paragraph 2, any adult, parent, or guardian on school grounds who engages in threatening behavior, verbal harassment, or physical intimidation toward a student, staff member, or guest will be immediately removed from the premises. He looked over his glasses at Trina, his gaze hard. Mrs. Halbrook, you are very, very close to crossing that line. Trina's chest was heaving. She was trapped by Ms. Patel, by the locked door, by the rule book. I could see her mind racing, churning, trying to find a new narrative where she was the victim. My own hands were shaking so hard I could barely function. But I had my phone. I was a communications major. I knew what to do. I discreetly unlocked the screen, found the audio recorder app, and hit the red button. I placed the phone screen down on the corner of Mr. Corbett's desk, next to a stack of files, pointing toward the center of the room. I'd like to make a statement, I said. My voice was a reedy thing, trembling, but it was loud enough. Everyone looked at me. Ms. Patel, Mr. Corbett, even Trina. Her fury momentarily eclipsed by confusion. I am 22 years old, I said, forcing myself to look from Mr. Corbett to Ms. Patel, to make eye contact. I am not a student at this high school. I am here as an employee of Northline Creative Lab. I am a legal adult. Mrs. Halbrook is not my legal guardian. Her attempt to strike me constitutes threatened assault. I have the right to be protected on this property. The words hung in the air, cold and formal, legal. I had just drawn the line that my father had spent a decade erasing. Trina saw her catastrophic error. The rage vanished, replaced instantly by a flood of tears. It was an incredible, breathtaking performance. Her face crumpled, and she put her hand to her chest, a picture of a wounded mother. "Strike you? Delaney? Strike you?" she gasped, turning to Mr. Corbett, her eyes overflowing. I was reaching for her. She's upset. I am her mother in every way that matters. I was just trying to teach her some respect. She was being hysterical. I was just trying to be a parent, and she's twisting it. It was brilliant. She was recasting herself as the victim of my hysteria. She was painting me as the unstable one. Ms. Patel, however, was not moved. She had pulled a small, spiral-bound notebook from her belt pocket. She clicked her pen. "Subject is an adult, not a minor," she said, her voice a monotone as she wrote. "Subject is not a student of this school. Parent confirmed she is not the legal guardian. Intent to make physical contact was observed." "I was not!" Trina yelled, the tears instantly drying, her mask slipping again. "You raised your hand in an aggressive posture. Ma'am, that's sufficient for the alert," Ms. Patel said. She did not look up from her pad. The soft lock on the door clicked, a mechanical sound. It was being overridden from the outside. The door swung open, and my father stumbled in. Evan Rhodes was a man perpetually worn down by life. He was covered in black grease from the transmission, his breathing heavy and ragged from running from the parking lot. His eyes were wide with panic. "Trina, what's going on? They said the office was locked. Are you okay? Is Mia?" He went straight to her. He didn't look at me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He put his arm around Trina, who immediately collapsed against him, sobbing. Her script found once more. "Evan, it's awful," she cried, burying her face in his dirty jacket. "She's accusing me. She told them I tried to hit her, in front of the principal. She's recording me. She called me an assailant." My father looked at me, over Trina's head. His face wasn't angry. It was something worse. It was just tired, deeply, profoundly disappointed. It was the "why are you making this so difficult" look, the look that had governed my entire childhood. "Dell," he said, his voice pleading. "What are you doing? Turn that phone off. Apologize to Trina. We're a family. We don't do this." She raised her hand to me. "Dad." "She was upset," he shot back, his voice rising in defense of her, his priority clear. "You're cornering her. Just stop this. Whatever this is, it's embarrassing." Embarrassing. That's all this was to him. not terrifying, not the final straw, just a social inconvenience. The glass wall of the office had become a focal point. A few teachers, drawn by the commotion and the arrival of security, were standing in the outer office, watching. I recognized Mrs. Gable, my old English teacher. She knew me. She knew I'd volunteered for the school paper for 2 years. She wasn't looking at me with pity. She was looking at me with support. She met my eyes and gave me a short, firm nod. That nod solidified my spine. "No," I said, my voice clear. The shaking had stopped. "I will not apologize, and I want this documented." I turned to Ms. Patel, ignoring my father. "I want to file an official incident report." My father looked stunned. "A report? Delaney, for God's sake, this is your family. You'll ruin her." "This is a school security matter," I said, cutting him off. "Ms. Patel, you witnessed it. Mr. Corbett, you witnessed it. I was threatened. I want a report filed." "Mr. Corbett sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He looked exhausted. "Delaney, a report has implications for everyone. It goes on a permanent district file." "I'm aware," I said. "I want it." This was the standoff. Trina, realizing her tears had no effect on Ms. Patel and her husband had no authority over me, was silent, her face a mask of cold fury. My father looked helplessly between us, his hands half raised as if to ward us all off. Ms. Patel had her pen poised over her notebook, waiting for the principal's command. The air was so static it felt like it would crackle. The only sound was the high-frequency buzz of the fluorescent lights. We were all just waiting for the next move, waiting for the Weston representative to walk into this absolute catastrophic disaster. The silence stretched for 10 seconds and then, just as the tension became unbearable, the office door, which Evan had left ajar, was pushed open. It wasn't a teacher, it wasn't the Weston rep I was expecting. An old man stepped into the room. He was tall, thin, and wore a dark cashmere overcoat that probably cost more than my father's car. His hair was pure silver, and his face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He was followed by a woman in a severe dark suit carrying a leather briefcase. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, taking in the scene with an almost academic detachment. Ms. Patel at attention, Trina, tear-streaked and furious, my father, covered in grease, looking defeated, me, standing my ground. He looked right at me, and his expression softened, just for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something I hadn't seen in 12 years. He moved past my father, his expensive leather shoes silent on the linoleum. He walked directly to Mr. Corbett's desk, reached into his coat pocket, and placed a large, heavy ring of keys on the blotter. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was quiet, cultured, and carried the effortless authority of old money. "My apologies for the intrusion. I seem to have arrived in the middle of something." Mr. Corbett stared at him, confused. "Sir, can I help you? This is a private "I'm Arthur Beckett," the man said. He gestured to the keys. "They're for the new studio build-out in the Beckett Annex. I was meeting my granddaughter." He turned his head slowly, his gaze sweeping over Trina and landing on her raised hand, which was still protectively rubbing her wrist. "Who?" he asked, his voice dropping to an icy calm. "Was about to lay a hand on my granddaughter?" Arthur Beckett. The name hit me like a physical blow, a ghost story made real. My grandfather, my mother's father, a man I hadn't seen in person since I was 10, a stiff, silent figure in a black suit at her funeral. He and my father had a falling out, a chasm of quiet resentment I never understood. He sent a card with a $50 check every Christmas, signed in a severe, sharp script. That was it. And now he was here, looking like he owned the very air we were breathing. My father, Evan, made a small, strangled sound. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. His face, already pale beneath the grease, went ashen. "Arthur," he whispered. It was barely audible. Trina, however, didn't know the name. She just saw an obstacle, an old rich man who had interrupted her scene. "I beg your pardon," she said, her voice still sharp. "But this is a private family matter, and you are—" "He's my grandfather," I said. My voice was quiet. The words felt strange in my mouth. Arthur Beckett's gaze remained fixed on Trina. He didn't acknowledge my father's whisper or my confirmation. He was still processing the scene he'd walked into, the raw, ugly tableau of Trina's fury. "My granddaughter," he repeated, the words hanging in the air. "Delaney Rhodes." The woman in the suit, Elise Grant, stepped forward slightly. She addressed Mr. Corbett, her voice crisp and professional, as if the preceding argument had never happened. "Mr. Corbett, I am Elise Grant, counsel for the Beckett Foundation. We are here representing the Weston Fellowship." Mr. Corbett, who had been frozen behind his desk, gawked. You're with the Weston Fellowship? I thought—" "Mr. Beckett is the founder and primary benefactor of the fellowship," Elise Grant stated flatly. "He prefers to remain anonymous, but given the circumstances, he felt a personal visit was in order. We are here, Principal Corbett, to congratulate Ms. Rhodes on being this year's regional recipient." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. My father stared at Arthur, his mouth slightly open. He looked like he was mentally replaying every Christmas card he'd let me send, every polite, distant no thank you to invitations I never knew about. Trina's reaction was a different animal. Her mind was working, the gears spinning behind her eyes. Beckett Annex, Weston Fellowship. She was connecting the dots of power. The surprise on her face was quickly hardening into a deep, wary suspicion. A rich grandfather I'd never mentioned? This was a new variable she hadn't calculated, a threat she couldn't control. Arthur finally turned his gaze to me. His eyes were a pale, clear blue, just like my mother's. "Delaney," he said. He reached into the inner pocket of his cashmere coat. He didn't smile, but his expression lost its hard edge. He produced a thick, cream-colored envelope made of heavy cardstock. "This is the official confirmation. I wanted to deliver it myself." I reached out and took it. My fingers were numb. "There is also," he continued, "a secondary offer inside, a paid internship for the summer. Should you choose to accept it, at Beacon and Sable Media, the starting salary is substantial. We feel your documentary work shows significant promise." My knees felt weak again. Beacon and Sable. I knew that name. It was a major player, a real, legitimate media company, the kind of place I dreamed of working at, not interning at. I don't know what to say." Arthur held my gaze. He took a half-step closer, lowering his voice so that only I could hear it. The world seemed to shrink to just the two of us, a pocket of quiet in the eye of the storm. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't place. "I have been silent for far too long. Delaney, since long before your mother's funeral, I let your father's pride, and my own, keep me away. I see now what a grave error that was. Today," he said, his eyes glancing for a second at Trina, "is about making that right." A hot tear pricked my eye, not from sadness, but from a profound, seismic shift. He saw me. He hadn't been in my life, but he saw me. "Mr. Corbett," Elise Grant said, her voice cutting cleanly through the moment. "I understand this office is under a security hold?" She looked pointedly at Ms. Patel, who was still standing at ease, her notebook in hand. Yes, a precaution," Mr. Corbett stammered, running a hand through his thinning hair. "There was a disagreement." "We witnessed the end of it," Elise said, her tone leaving no doubt as to what she meant. "We can provide a statement for Ms. Patel's report." My father flinched. Trina shot Elise a look of pure venom. "However," Elise continued, "this is clearly not a conducive environment for a meeting. We have fellowship business to discuss with Ms. Rhodes, and donor business to discuss with you." Mr. Corbett, do you have a small conference room we could use? Somewhere more private? Yes, of course, Mr. Corbett said, grateful for the exit. Right this way, the staff lounge conference room. It's just down the hall. Ms. Patel, Arthur said, looking at the security officer. Thank you for your professionalism. Ms. Patel simply nodded. Sir? Evan, Arthur said, his voice flat as he turned to my father. You and your wife, you may as well come. This concerns the family you've built. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. Trina bristled, but my father, looking utterly broken, just nodded and put a hand on her arm, pulling her along. We walked out of the principal's office in a new, bizarre formation. Elise Grant led, followed by Mr. Corbett. I walked beside Arthur, and trailing behind us like prisoners were Evan and Trina. I glanced back. Through the glass, I saw Mia. She was still standing by the trophy case, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She had watched the entire procession. Her face was a mask of pure confusion. She wasn't watching me. She was watching the back of Arthur Beckett's cashmere coat, watching this ghost of a man lead her mother and my father out of an office under a security hold. She was watching a display of quiet, effortless power she never knew existed. The Beckett power. The conference room was sterile. A long, polished laminate table, 8 uncomfortable chairs, and a whiteboard. It smelled like disinfectant. Mr. Corbett gestured for us to sit. Elise Grant, however, remained standing. She placed her leather briefcase on the table and clicked it open. She did not take out files. Instead, she produced a large, rolled-up tube. Arthur remained standing with her. He took the tube and unrolled it onto the table. It wasn't a poster. It was an architectural map, a blueprint of the school and the surrounding commercial properties. Mr. Corbett, Arthur said, placing a long finger on a square building adjacent to the high school. This, as you know, is the Beckett Annex. My company has owned it for 30 years. It's currently about 70% vacant. Mr. Corbett nodded, his eyes wide. Yes, I know it. We sometimes use the parking lot for overflow at football games. Good, because, as part of the Weston Fellowship's new community initiative, Arthur continued, I am officially offering this afternoon to donate the entire 3rd floor to Maple Ridge High, along with a grant of $200,000 to build a state-of-the-art media studio. Mr. Corbett's jaw literally dropped. He sank into one of the chairs. 200,000? A whole floor? Mr. Beckett, I am speechless. It's the Mary Beckett Memorial Studio, Arthur said, his voice hardening. Named for my daughter, your former student. My breath hitched. My mother. She loved this school, Arthur said. She believed in public education, and she believed in giving students the tools to tell the truth. He tapped the map again. I provide these tools, and I expect the school to uphold her values, which brings me to my condition. He looked up from the map, his gaze sweeping over everyone and landing, finally, on Trina. My condition is that this school, this campus, must be a place of absolute safety, not just for its students, but for its guests, for its partners, for employees of Northline Creative Lab, for Weston Fellows. The room was silent. The axis of power had not just shifted, it had been ripped from its foundation. 10 minutes ago, Trina was a furious parent, holding my housing and my future hostage, ready to strike me in the principal's office. Now, she was just a woman in a sterile room, being silently, politely, and comprehensively dismantled by a man who owned the buildings, funded the scholarships, and was now, quite literally, rewriting the map of the school in my mother's name. The keys he'd placed on the principal's desk, they weren't just keys to a building, they were the keys to this entire, new reality, and he had just handed them to me. The air in the conference room was thin and cold. Mr. Corbett looked like a man who had just been offered the keys to the kingdom, but was now realizing he was trapped in the throne room. Elise Grant snapped her briefcase shut, the sound echoing the thunk of the magnetic lock from the principal's office. She then unzipped a separate, much thinner portfolio I hadn't noticed. It was black leather, formal, deadly. "Mr. Corbett," Elise said, her voice now devoid of any warmth. "This portion of the meeting is a private legal matter concerning the Beckett family and Mr. and Mrs. Rhodes. You are, of course, a witness to the events in your office, but you are free to excuse yourself from this part." Mr. Corbett looked at Arthur. Arthur gave a slight, permissive nod. Mr. Corbett practically ran from the room, muttering something about calling the district superintendent about the grant. Ms. Patel, however, did not move. She remained at her post by the door, her presence a silent fact. She was a witness. She was security. Elise Grant waited until the door clicked shut. She turned her attention to the laminate table. Then she began. She slid a single piece of paper from the portfolio and placed it in the center of the table, turning it to face my father. It was a photocopy of a credit card statement. "Evan," she said, using his first name. It was a calculated move, clinical. "Does this account look familiar to you?" My father leaned forward, squinting. It's the Visa, the one we keep for household emergencies." "The card is in your name, Evan Rhodes," Elise stated. "And the statements, for the past 2 years, have been mailed to this address." She slid a second piece of paper onto the table. It was a screenshot of the account's billing address. I read it upside down. It wasn't our house. It was a P.O. box registered to Carly's Closet, a consignment boutique downtown where Trina spent a lot of her time. The owner was her best friend. Trina went rigid. "I don't see what this has to do with anything. I have my mail sent there for convenience. What is this, an interrogation?" "It's a clarification," Elise said. She took a highlighter from her portfolio and, with terrifying precision, began to mark the statement. "Let's look at the charges. October 10th. Pinecrest Student Store, for $430, September 28th. Academic Software Solutions, for $190, September 5th. University Press, for $212. She looked up at Trina. "It appears you have been generously supporting Delaney's education." Trina sniffed. Regaining her footing, she saw an angle. "Of course I have. I have always supported her, even when she's been difficult. She's an ungrateful child. I pay for her books, her supplies. We've given her everything." "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking. I buy my own books. I use the school library license for software. I haven't taken a dime from you for school supplies since I started at Pinecrest." "She's lying," Trina snapped, her eyes flashing. "She's trying to make me look bad in front of your grandfather." "Are you?" Elise asked me, her gaze steady. "I am not lying," I said. "I paid for my thesis camera with 6 months of savings from Northline." "That's because my client," Elise said, "obtained the itemized receipts for these charges before we ever came here today." She laid them down, one by one. "The Pinecrest Student Store charge," she said, tapping the paper, "was not for books. It was for a Marc Jacobs handbag, purchased from the boutique inside the student union, which uses the same credit processor." Trina's face went white. "The academic software charge," Elise continued, her voice relentless, "was a gift certificate for the Inner Peace Day Spa, and University Press was a series in 3 transactions from The Gilded Vine, the restaurant where you and your friends have lunch every Friday." A cold, sick feeling was rising in my throat. I looked at the papers. For years, at every holiday, every birthday, every time I asked for a small, simple thing, Trina's response was always the same. "Do you have any idea what we sacrifice for you? The money for your books, your fees, it doesn't grow on trees. Delaney, you owe this family your gratitude. All those sacrifices, all those favors, all that support she held over my head, it was all a lie. It was a handbag. It was a spa day." And then the full, horrific realization landed. The card is in Dad's name. I looked at my father. His face was a mask of confusion. She was putting you in debt, I whispered. She was buying purses and telling me it was my textbooks and making you pay the bill. And then she was shaming me for it. The room was silent. The lie was so complete, so insidious. It had poisoned every interaction for years. Evan, Arthur Beckett said, his voice quiet. He hadn't moved. Did you approve these purchases? My father looked at the statements. He looked at Trina. He looked like he was going to be sick. I don't handle the bills. Arthur, he stammered, his voice weak. Trina, she gives me the pile to sign at the end of the month. She said the visa was high because of Delaney's college expenses. She said it was for the house. I just signed them. I just signed them to get it over with, to keep the peace. The signature of his avoidance was right there, in black and white, on the bottom of a $5,000 credit card bill. She didn't just lie to me, I said, the ice spreading through my veins. She lied to you, too, and she used me to do it. This is not, Trina said, her voice a low growl. All on me. The money. The pressure. It's unbearable. You have no idea what it takes to run a house. I imagine it is difficult, Elise said, especially when planning for a child's future. She slid the next document from her portfolio. It was thicker. It was a loan application. This is a Federal Parent Plus loan application, filed 6 days ago, for Mia Halbrook, for $55,000 per year. Trina, my father yelped. It was the first real emotion he'd shown. 55,000? You told me we were just looking at community college. You said the state school was too expensive. And Elise continued, as you do not have the income to support that loan, you filed for an alternative, a home equity line of credit. She placed the final, terrible paper on the table, a mortgage application. You've leveraged the entire house, Evan, the house you owned outright before you married her. My father stood up so fast his chair screeched and fell over. The house? Trina, you told me that was a what-if scenario. You said it was just to see if we qualified. We have to do something for Mia, Trina shrieked, finally dropping all pretense. She's not going to be left behind. She deserves the best. And Delaney didn't? My father's voice cracked. Delaney had him, Trina screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Arthur. She had this secret, this money. This was always her plan, to make me look bad. Arthur Beckett watched this, his face impassive. He was a scientist observing a chemical reaction. He let the silence hang after her accusation. He let it sit there until it became toxic. And then he spoke. Mrs. Halbrook, he said, his voice calm, almost curious. I am 78 years old. I have seen men lie, cheat, and steal for money, for power, for pride. He leaned forward, just slightly. But this level of intricate deception, a secret credit card, a false narrative of sacrifice, a mortgage hidden from your husband, it is remarkable. It makes me wonder, what kind of person goes to such lengths to maintain a fiction? He paused, his eyes finding hers. And what happens when that fiction is threatened? When a 22-year-old girl wins a scholarship based on her own merit, a scholarship that threatens to expose the entire fragile house of cards, is that, he asked, when a person decides to raise their hand in a principal's office? When the lies are so deep, the only thing left to do is to try and silence the truth? He had done it. He had connected her lies to her violence. He had laid it all bare. Trina was cornered. She had nothing left to lose, and so she attacked the biggest target. You, she spat, her face contorted. This is a setup. This whole thing. You walk in here, a man I've never met, with your lawyer, and your blueprints, and your fake, anonymous scholarship. This is a conspiracy. You are trying to destroy my family. You are trying to poison my husband against me. You are trying to buy my stepdaughter. It was a bold play. Victimhood. Elise Grant did not even sigh. She simply reached into her portfolio. A conspiracy, Mrs. Halbrook? Is that what you call this? She produced one last single sheet of paper, an email. This is a copy of an email sent 2 weeks ago from the address trinahmapleridge@gmail.com to Mr. Suthers in the Pinecrest State University Financial Aid Office. The subject line reads, "Concern regarding student Delaney Rhodes." My blood ran cold. As the Weston Fellowship coordinates directly with the university's financial aid department, Elise explained, this email was flagged by their compliance team and forwarded to us immediately, as it constituted an attempt to interfere with a finalist's application. She looked at Trina. "Would you like me to read it aloud, or would you prefer to?" Trina was silent. Elise read, "Dear Mr. Suthers, I am writing as a concerned member of Delaney Rhodes's family. While she is a bright girl, she has a history of exaggerating her financial hardship to gain sympathy. We provide her with a very stable, supportive home, and we cover all of her expenses, but she has a tendency for drama. I am deeply concerned that her application for any outside aid, such as the Weston Fellowship, might contain misrepresentations about her home life. I urge you to conduct a full review of her file before any funds are disbursed." It went on. It was a character assassination. It was full of coded language. Unstable. Demanding. A history of manipulating the truth. She had tried to sabotage me. Weeks ago, long before the threat of deferring, long before the camera, she had seen me applying for a way out, and she had taken active, calculated steps to lock the door. My father sank back into his chair, his face in his hands. He didn't make a sound. I looked at Trina. The fury was gone. The fear was gone. There was nothing left inside me but a strange, cold calm, the calm of absolute certainty. "All this time," I said. My voice was low, and it didn't shake. "All the years you told me I was the burden, all the speeches about gratitude, you weren't supporting me. You were just billing my father for your spa days." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "I only ever asked for one thing, a chance to go to school, a chance to learn, a chance to make something of myself so I wouldn't be a burden. I never asked for your money. Trina, I never asked for a place in your wallet." I looked her dead in the eye. "I just asked for a chance, and you tried to take that too." My father let out a small, broken sound, but he didn't look up. He didn't look at her, and for the first time in my entire life, I realized he was not looking at me, either. He couldn't. He couldn't face what he had allowed to happen. He just stared at the table, a silent, broken man, destroyed by the very peace he had tried so desperately to keep. The silence in the conference room was a heavy, suffocating blanket. My father was still in the chair he'd collapsed into, his head in his hands, his knuckles white against the grease on his skin. Trina was standing, but she looked smaller. The rage had burned out, leaving a pale, papery husk. She was staring at the email in Elise Grant's hand, the proof of her sabotage, as if she could will it into flames. Ms. Patel remained by the door, a silent, implacable guardian of procedure. Elise Grant was the first to move. She didn't put the financial statements and the email back into her briefcase. She slid them, one by one, into a clear, archival-quality plastic sleeve. She was no longer just a lawyer. She was a curator of Trina's destruction. "Well," Elise said, her voice crisp and devoid of emotion, "I believe that clarifies the motivation for the incident in the principal's office." She sealed the sleeve. "Mr. Corbett," she called, her voice rising slightly. Mr. Corbett, who had been hovering just outside the open door, looking like he'd rather be anywhere on earth, flinched and stepped back in. "Yes, I was just on the phone with the district superintendent. He is, to say the least, ecstatic about the donation, the Mary Beckett Memorial Studio." He said my mother's name with a new reverence. "He's also," Mr. Corbett continued, his face clouding, asking for a preliminary report on the security protocol violation that we just experienced. He was back in his principal mode, his spine reinserting itself. He looked directly at Trina. Mrs. Halbrook, this is no longer a family disagreement. As of this moment, this is a formal disciplinary matter. A what? Trina whispered. You are an adult, a non-student, who engaged in threatening behavior and verbal harassment on school property, culminating in an action that required security intervention, Mr. Corbett said, his voice gaining strength. That is a severe breach of the district code of conduct. We will be convening a formal disciplinary hearing to review the incident and determine consequences. Consequences? Trina's voice was shaky. What consequences? You can't discipline me. I'm a parent. On this campus, Mr. Corbett said, you are a guest, and you violated the terms of that invitation. The consequences can include a formal restraining order banning you from school property. This is ridiculous. Trina found her voice again, a shrill, desperate sound. This is a setup. It's his word. She pointed a shaking finger at Arthur. And her word, against mine. You have no proof. You can't prove anything. Actually, a new voice said from the doorway, that's not exactly true. We all turned. It was Noah Fields, my colleague. He was standing there, his heavy camera bag slung over one shoulder, looking like he wanted to be sick. He was holding a small black SD card in his hand. Noah, I said. Mr. Corbett? Ms. Patel? Noah said, his voice trembling, but determined. He wouldn't look at me. I think I have something you need to see, for your report. My stomach clenched. Noah, what are you— I'm sorry, Delaney, he said, finally meeting my eyes. His were full of a miserable, professional apology. I was filming, for the B-roll, when you got the email. He took a deep breath. I was rolling when you were crying by the trophy case. It was a great moment. And then you walked up. He looked at Trina. I kept rolling, he said, his voice dropping. My camera was at my side, but the microphone is sensitive. It picked up everything, the luck comments, the tricks, the entire conversation, and then, when you all went into the office, I was grabbing a shot of the admin sign, and I heard the yelling. He looked at Ms. Patel. I filmed the entire intervention. Your hand, Mrs. Halbrook, Ms. Patel's, Ms. Patel blocking you. The alarm. I have the entire incident on video. It's time-stamped. A wave of nausea hit me. My life, my humiliation, captured in 4K. I'm not going to do anything with it, Noah said, seeing the look on my face. I'm not a monster. I would never post this. It's not news. It's wrong. He held the small card out, but I heard her say, you have no proof, and that's not true. This is proof. You should have it, for your report. He held the card out to Ms. Patel. Before she could take it, Elise Grant stepped forward, her hand extended. As legal counsel for a party involved, Mr. Fields, I will take custody of that, she said. We will make a certified, unedited copy available to Ms. Patel and the school district for their hearing. Thank you for your integrity. Noah, looking profoundly relieved to be rid of it, dropped the card into her palm. He gave me one last, anguished look and vanished from the doorway. Elise Grant held the small black card between her thumb and forefinger. She looked at Trina, who seemed to have shrunk. Trina was no longer a force of nature. She was just a woman in a room full of receipts. This, Elise said to Trina, brings me to my final and most important point. You are, I am sure, an active member of the Maple Ridge community. You have a social media presence. You have friends. You will be sorely, desperately tempted to reframe this narrative, to go online and paint yourself as the victim of a wealthy, interfering old man, to paint my client's granddaughter as an ungrateful, lying child. She took a step closer to Trina. I am advising you, as strongly as I am legally able, not to do that. You see, the email you sent to the financial aid office? That is libel per se. The credit card statements? That is compelling evidence of financial fraud. And this little card? She held it up. This is a verified, time-stamped recording of your behavior today. She let the silence hang. You post one word. You write one vague, defamatory Facebook status. You send one text message to another parent blaming Delaney. And I will no longer be discussing this in a conference room. I will be filing a civil suit for defamation, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, and I will release every single document. We are clear, aren't we? Trina didn't speak. She just made a small, choking sound. Arthur finally spoke. Mr. Corbett, he said, his voice pulling the room back to business. My offer for the Mary Beckett Memorial Studio stands. The $200,000 grant is secure. Mr. Corbett visibly relaxed. But, Arthur continued, my condition is now concrete. The grant is contingent on the district board reviewing, adopting, and enforcing a new code of conduct, not for students, for adults on campus, a zero-tolerance policy for the harassment of any student, staff, or guest. Elise will draft a proposal. That is my non-negotiable term. Mr. Beckett, Corbett said, straightening his tie, after what I have witnessed today, I am certain our board will find that proposal to be a very necessary upgrade. I will champion it myself. This is a golden opportunity, not just to upgrade our facilities, but our standards. While we were in that sealed, sterile room, the digital world had already started to move. The official story, the one sanctioned by the school, hit the Maple Ridge High homepage at 3 p.m. Local Pinecrest student Delaney Rhodes wins prestigious Weston Fellowship. It had my Northline Creative Lab bio photo, where I looked professional and serious. It was a clean story. It mentioned the upcoming assembly. It mentioned, vaguely, a transformative new gift for a media lab from an anonymous donor. But this was Maple Ridge. The gossip was always faster. By 4 p.m., the local community Facebook group was already buzzing. Did anyone hear all the noise at the high school? I heard someone's mom got escorted out of the principal's office by security. It was Trina Halbrook, swear to God. My friend is a teacher's aide, said she was screaming at her stepdaughter about money. The rumors were messy, inaccurate, and dangerous, but they were all pointed, for once, in the right direction. Arthur turned to me, his entire demeanor softening. Delaney, the fellowship is just the beginning, part of the award. When the recipient is local, is an offer of ambassadorship. It's a paid position. An extra $500 a month. You would mentor high school students in this district, run workshops, help them with their own applications, in the new studio, once it's built. This was the power he was giving me, not just the check, but the role, the authority. I would be honored. Grandpa, I said, the words still feeling new. And, I added, finding my footing, I would want it to be open to everyone, every single student at Maple Ridge High. No exceptions, no prejudice. I let that hang in the air. Even Mia. I would not be Trina. I would not lock the door on another person's child. My father, who had been a silent statue of grease and shame, finally looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. He didn't look at Trina. He looked at me. Delaney, he said, his voice a gravelly wreck. Can I please talk to you? Alone? Trina's head snapped up. Evan, don't you dare. Please, Del. He cut her off, his voice begging, his eyes fixed on me. I need to talk to my daughter. The old Delaney would have folded. The old Delaney, desperate for a single crumb of affection, would have said yes, anything, just to make his pain stop. But the old Delaney had been financially exploited, emotionally abused, and nearly slapped in a school office. The old Delaney was gone. No, I said. His face fell. Not alone, I clarified. The air rushed back into his lungs. "I will talk to you, Dad. I will, but I will have a witness. A third party." I looked at Elise, who gave me a subtle, sharp nod. "Elise, or Miss Patel, I don't care, but I am never, ever going to be in a room with this family's disagreements by myself again." That was the moment Trina finally, completely, lost control. It was her last, desperate play. She started to sob. Not the angry, frustrated tears from before. This was a deep, heaving, performative wail, a full-body collapse. "Look what you've done," she screamed at me, at Arthur. You've destroyed us. You've ruined my family. You've turned my husband against me. You've ruined my life. All of this, all for what? For money." It was the martyr card, her ace in the hole. And I watched it fail. My father didn't move. He didn't rush to her side. He just looked at her, his eyes dead. "Stop it, Trina," he whispered. "Just stop." Elise Grant glanced at her watch. Ms. Patel was studying a fire extinguisher chart on the wall. Arthur Beckett was looking at me, and his expression was one of profound, sad, and terrible pride. Her tears were useless. Her performance was over. The theater was empty. No one was clapping. No one believed her anymore. The conference room door clicked shut, leaving the three of us in a sudden, heavy silence. The ghosts of the argument, of Trina's desperate sobs, and Arthur's cold authority, still hung in the air. Now, there was just the hum of the ventilation system. It was just me, my father, and Elise Grant, who had pulled a fresh yellow legal pad from her portfolio and clicked her pen. She was no longer a lawyer. She was a witness, a scribe. My father, Evan Rhodes, was a man hollowed out. He was still sitting in the chair he had collapsed into, the one he'd knocked over and righted. His hands, stained black with transmission fluid, rested on the laminate table. He stared at his own knuckles as if they were foreign objects. He was a man who worked with his hands, a man who understood the mechanics of an engine, and he had just watched his entire life be taken apart, piece by piece, on a conference table. "Evan," Elise said, her voice quiet but not unkind, "Delaney has agreed to this meeting. The floor is yours." He didn't look up, not at first. I don't," he started. His voice was a rasp. He cleared his throat, the sound unnaturally loud. "I don't know where to start." "Start with Mom," I said. My voice was flat, not angry, just empty. His head snapped up. His eyes, bloodshot and weary, met mine. "What?" "Start with when Mom died. That's where this started, isn't it? The fear." He recoiled, as if I'd struck him. He looked at Elise, this stranger, and his face flushed with a deep, painful shame. He was being seen. "Delaney, please," he whispered. "Not in front of—" "She's my witness. Dad, you wanted to talk, so talk." He looked back down at his hands. The silence stretched again. For a full minute, Elise's pen did not move. "You're right," he finally said, his voice so low I had to lean forward. "It was after Mary, after your mom, the house. It was just so quiet." He was talking to his hands, not to me. "It was just me and you. Del, you were 10. You were so quiet, too. You were always just reading in your room. It was like I'd lost you both. The silence, it was so loud. I thought I was going to go crazy from it. And then," he said, taking a ragged breath, "I met Trina. I watched him. I felt nothing. This was a story I had lived, but I had never heard the prologue. She was not quiet," he said, a small, broken sound that might have been a laugh. She was life. She was loud. She had opinions. She had Mia. She came in and she just filled the house. There was arguing, and there was cooking, and there was There was noise, and I was so grateful for the noise. I was so terrified of the quiet. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were swimming. She just took over. The bills, the house, Mia, you. She had a plan for everything, and I let her, because it was easier. It was easier than being alone. It was easier than the silence. So you just let her? I asked. I'd come home from the shop, he stammered, and my back would be aching, and I'd be covered in grease, and the fight would start, about money, about Mia's school, about you needing shoes, or a book, and she'd just wear me down. I knew, he whispered, the confession tearing out of him. I knew she was hard on you. I saw it, the little things, the comments, the way she'd praise Mia for something and just ignore you for the same thing. And I told myself it was just her way. I told myself she was just stressed. She called me a leech, Dad, for 10 years. I know, he said, his voice cracking. He put his face in his hands. I know, and I was a coward. I was a goddamned coward. I was so scared. I was so scared that if I stood up to her, if I fought back, she would take Mia, and she would leave, and the house would be quiet again, and I couldn't lose another family, Del. I just couldn't. He took a deep, shuddering breath. I didn't realize, until today, until I saw her face in that office. I didn't realize I was letting her trade you, to keep her. I didn't realize I had already lost. I had already lost you, long before today. He finished. He had nothing left. He sat there, a broken, empty man. His entire decade of avoidance laid bare on the table. Elise's pen had been moving, a steady, silent shorthand. I took a breath. I felt the tears, the hot, angry tears of that 10-year-old, but they were distant. They weren't in control. I'm not here to talk about the last 10 years. Dad, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I can't. I don't have the energy. I'm not here to make you feel better about it. I'm here to set the terms for now, for today, and for tomorrow. He looked up, his eyes wide. He was expecting rage. He was expecting tears. He was not expecting terms. I want, I said, full financial transparency, everything. I want to see every bill, every account, every statement you just signed to keep the peace. I looked at Elise. I want my name off every single document. I want to know if there is a single dollar of debt in my name. I looked back at my father. And you will never again use Delaney's expenses as a line item for her, ever. That lie. That stops. Today. Elise Grant put her pen down. Mr. Rhodes, she said, her voice shifting back to the professional. Here is what that looks like, legally. My father, who looked lost in the emotional wreckage, flinched. He was more comfortable with lawyers than with feelings. 1, Elise said, tapping her pad. We are closing that Visa account this afternoon, the one with the statements going to the boutique. It will be frozen, and the debt will be allocated. 2, she continued, we will be conducting, as Delaney requested, a full, independent audit of all household expenditures for the past 24 months. This will specifically itemize any and all charges falsely attributed to Delaney. We will create a full accounting of that fraudulent debt. 3, she said, her voice like steel. That debt, the handbags, the spa days, that is not Delaney's. That is yours and Mrs. Halbrook's. It will be legally fenced off. It will not touch her. It will not affect her credit. It will not be her inheritance. My father's face was pale. I can't afford an audit. I can't afford you, he said, gesturing at Elise. I'm a mechanic. I'm buried. Mr. Beckett anticipated this, Elise said smoothly. He has authorized my firm to act on your behalf, Mr. Rhodes, for the sole purpose of this financial restructuring and reorganization. He's paying for this? My father whispered. The Beckett Foundation will cover all legal fees, Elise confirmed, with two non-negotiable conditions. My father tensed. He was a man who understood conditions. On your full, complete, and total cooperation and transparency, no more hidden accounts, no more signing things blindly. You are an active, fully informed participant. And two? He asked. Elise's gaze was sharp. You will protect Delaney. You will commit, legally, to protecting her from any and all future pressure, manipulation, or retaliation from Mrs. Halbrook. This offer is contingent on you finally and publicly choosing to be your daughter's father. This was it. This was the test. Arthur was offering him a lifeline. But it was attached to me. To get the help, he had to hold on to me. My father looked at me. His eyes were awful. They were full of 10 years of shame. He was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time since my mother died. She's my wife, Dell, he whispered, a last, dying defense of his old life. She is the woman, I said, my voice cold, who tried to hit me in an office. She is the woman who tried to sabotage my scholarship. She is the woman who has been robbing you blind and blaming me for it for years. So, you have to choose. He flinched. He looked down at his stained, useless hands. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, the weakness was gone. It was replaced by a dull, aching resolve. Delaney, he said, and my name was a different shape in his mouth. It wasn't an annoyance. It wasn't a burden. It was a name. I am sorry. I held my breath. I am so sorry, he said, and the words were clean. There were no buts. There were no if-onlys. I'm sorry I wasn't a father. I was a roommate. I was a coward. I'm sorry I let her. I let all of this happen. I'm sorry I used keeping the peace as an excuse to let you get hurt. I'm sorry. He had said it. The words I had been starving for my entire life. I'm sorry. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The knot in my chest, the one that had been there for a decade, loosened. It didn't vanish, but it loosened. Okay, I said. It was all I could manage. So, I said, finding my strength, if you mean it, there are other terms, my terms. He nodded, ready. Anything. Mia, I said. He flinched, expecting an attack. Mia didn't do this, I said. Trina did. That Weston ambassadorship, the workshops, the new studio. Mia can still come. She can still apply. She will not be punished for this. I will not become her. Mia will not get collateral damage from my war. She's welcome. A wave of profound relief washed over his face. Thank you, Dell. Thank you. But, I said, and my voice was hard again. Trina. His face tightened. I will not see her, not at the school, not at my job, not at Northline. She is not to contact me. She is not to come near me. Elise Grant's pen was flying. We will draft a formal no-contact agreement. It will stipulate no contact on any school property or at your place of employment, a restraining boundary, all necessary communication regarding Mia or the house will be conducted only via email to you, Evan, and my office will be copied on every single one. Is that clear? Yes, he said, his voice firm. One more thing, I said, looking at him. The money, the house, you said it yourself. You just signed things. You can't ever do that again. I don't care what you have to do. You don't give her a blank check. You don't give her control. Not if you want this, me, any of it. Never again, he said. He meant it. I could see it. The terror of the quiet house was finally less than the terror of this moment. From now on, it's cosign, it's 2 keys, it's me on every single bill. It's over. That part is over. We were done. The air was different. It wasn't light. It wasn't happy. But it was clean. The poison had been lanced. He looked at me, this man who was my father. His eyes were pleading. He looked like he wanted to stand up. He looked like he wanted to hug me. He was desperate for a single sign that he was forgiven. I didn't move. I couldn't. Not yet. The apology was a key, but the door was heavy. I just held his gaze, and after a long, long moment, I gave him a single, slow nod. It wasn't a hug. It wasn't forgiveness. It was an armistice. It was an agreement. It was the first, painful, shaky step on a completely different path. The trajectory of my entire life, and his, had just been permanently, fundamentally, altered. The next 2 months were a blur. The adrenaline from the confrontation faded, replaced by the humming, high-frequency energy of the deadline, my life, which had been defined by the cold, cramped kitchen table of my father's house, now shifted to the clean, quiet, and astoundingly new Mary Beckett Memorial Studio. It wasn't a room, it was a floor. Arthur's donation had been fast-tracked by the school board, who were not about to look a $200,000 gift horse in the mouth, especially one that came with a new code of conduct. While the main build-out was still underway, Mr. Corbett gave me priority access to a newly retrofitted editing bay, equipped with machines that didn't just not crash. They rendered my 4K footage in minutes, not hours. My thesis project was Silent Hands. It was a documentary profile of the legal immigrant labor force in Maple Ridge, the men and women who worked the kitchens at the ski resorts, cleaned the hotel rooms, and landscaped the sprawling lawns of families richer than Arthur. These were the people who were the engine of our postcard-perfect town, and they were completely invisible. I had the Weston grant, that magical $5,000, to pay for translators, location permits, and most importantly, to pay my subjects for their time. This wasn't exploitation, it was amplification. The school was proud. Mr. Corbett, now my staunchest ally, featured the studio and my project in the district's monthly newsletter, Maple Ridge High Partners with Pinecrest University and Weston Fellow Delaney Rhodes. My face was on the front page. I was visible, and to Trina, that visibility was a spotlight, and she was desperate to either share it or break the bulb. The first attack was bureaucratic. A formal, anonymous complaint was filed with the Pinecrest State University Provost's office. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive poison. It alleged that a certain communications student was improperly leveraging family connections, my new relationship with Arthur, to monopolize school district resources, the studio, for a project of questionable academic merit. It suggested that my grant money was a form of nepotism and that my entire thesis was a conflict of interest. It was Trina. It screamed Trina. It was her voice, translated into the bland, venomous language of a formal complaint. My academic advisor called me, his voice tight with frustration. I had to sit in his office, my stomach churning, as he read the allegations. But something was different this time. I wasn't alone. Elise Grant had, on behalf of the foundation, put a local attorney on a modest retainer for me. For incidentals, she'd called it. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Carr, sent a single 2-page letter to the provost. It stated, quite clearly, that 1. The Weston Fellowship was awarded before Arthur Beckett revealed his identity. 2. The studio was a donation to Maple Ridge High, not to me. 3. The fellowship grant was an external to private award that had zero connection to university funds. 4. The complaint itself, being anonymous and factually baseless, met the legal definition of harassment. The provost's office dismissed the complaint in less than 24 hours. Mr. Corbett, furious that his new donor relationship had been threatened, issued a memo to all staff and parents, reinforcing the new code of conduct and stating that baseless accusations that undermine our new community partnerships will be reviewed for disciplinary action. Trina's letter had done nothing but make my project more protected. The second attack was more personal, more dangerous. I was deep in the edit. I was working with footage of a woman named Maria, a chef from Guatemala. Her story was the heart of my film. She spoke, with incredible dignity, about the choice to leave her children behind to give them a future. It was sensitive. It was raw. It was the kind of footage that, in the wrong hands, could be used to humiliate, or worse, endanger her. An email went out to the entire Maple Ridge High staff, the Pinecrest Communications Department, and horrifyingly, the editor of the Maple Ridge Gazette. It was from a fake account, mapleridgetruth@gmail.com. The text was short. Delaney Rhodes's documentary is not what it seems. She is exploiting vulnerable people. Here is a deleted scene that proves she is paying for fake stories. She is just like her grandfather. Attached was a video file. Mariah Uncut Leak, MP4. My heart stopped. I called Noah. He was working in the main Northline office, but he was my designated tech support, my friend. Noah, it's bad, I said, my voice shaking. It's a leak. It's Maria. Hold on, he said. Don't click anything. What's the email? I read it to him. I heard him typing furiously. Don't open it. Del, he said, his voice sharp. Don't download the file. The metadata it's all wrong. It's a fake header. It's not a real video file. I think it's a malware package. It's designed to look like a leak to get people to click it. But I think it's a virus, a keystroke logger or a wiper. It's designed to destroy your project or steal your data. He was right. Within 60 seconds, the university's IT department, alerted by Noah, sent out a campus-wide phishing alert. The school's servers blocked the email. The link was dead. Who? I whispered, my hand shaking on the mouse. Who would do this? Who has a friend who works at the Wired Bean coffee shop? Elise Grant asked me on the phone an hour later. What? The email, Elise said, her voice like ice. It was sent from a burner account, but the IP address wasn't masked. It's from the public Wi-Fi at the Wired Bean. The barista who was on shift? The one who lets people use the staff Wi-Fi, which is unsecured? Her name is Carly. The same Carly who owns the consignment shop where Trina had her credit card statement sent. It was her. It was Trina. She hadn't just tried to file a complaint. She had tried to digitally sabotage my entire senior thesis, to burn it to the ground. We can't prove she typed it, Elise said, her voice tight with frustration. But we've proved the where. It's a pattern. What do we do? Nothing, Elise said. You keep working. I keep documenting. The rope is getting shorter. Delaney. The next day, my father came to the studio. He had never been. He stood in the doorway, his work boots looking huge and out of place on the clean floors. He was holding a crumpled piece of paper. This came to the house, he said. He didn't look at me. He looked at the soundproofing panels on the wall. It's a bill from the Wired Bean, a paper statement for their business Wi-Fi account. He held it out. It's in Trina's name. She must have set up the account for her friend to pay for it as a gift. The bill. It's always just gone into the pile. I never looked at it until today. I didn't take it. She used that Wi-Fi, didn't she? He whispered. The email, the fake one. Elise's office called me. They told me to look for anything, and I found this. He was handing me the evidence. He was, for the first time in his life, actively, painfully, choosing a side. He was handing me the proof that connected his wife to an act of criminal sabotage. Thank you, Dad, I said. He nodded, his throat working. Your grandpa, he said to protect you. I'm trying. Del, I'm trying. He looked at the screen, at the footage of Maria, her kind, lined face. She looks nice. She is, I said. Okay, he said, and he turned and left. The next Saturday was my first Weston workshop. As the new ambassador, I was terrified. I had a room full of 15 high school kids, all staring at me. I was supposed to be the success story. I was halfway through my presentation on narrative storytelling on a budget when the door at the back of the room opened. Mia Halbrook slipped in. She was wearing a hoodie, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She didn't look at me. She just slid into the last chair, in the darkest corner, pulled out a notebook, and started taking notes, her head down. The old Delaney would have frozen, would have felt the sting. She's here to spy. She's here to report back to Trina. But I wasn't the old Delaney. I paused my presentation. The room went quiet. "Actually," I said, "I'm really glad you're here." I looked right at her. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. She thought she was being called out. "We need one more person in the front row, or the camera angle for the recording is going to be off." I lied. "Mia, right? Would you mind? Just right here." I pointed to the empty chair in the very front. I wasn't offering an olive branch. I was offering a chair. No drama, no history. She stared at me, her mouth open. The other kids were watching, slowly, as if moving through water. She gathered her notebook, walked the long, terrible walk up the aisle, and sat in the front row. She didn't look at me. She just stared at her empty page. "Okay," I said, turning back to the group. "So, Aperture, let's talk about what Aperture actually is." I didn't shame her. I didn't publicly shame. I just treated her like a student. And in doing so, I had dismantled the narrative Trina had built for her, the one where I was the enemy. After the workshop, Mr. Corbett, who had been sitting in, stopped me. "That," he said, "was impressive, Delaney, on all counts." He handed me a file. "This is for you, and for Ms. Grant. It's the school's official pledge. We are copywriting your documentary under the school's media umbrella. It protects it. It means any attempt to leak, share, or post it without your and my written consent is a violation of our copyright. We're on your team now." In the file was a memo. It was from Ms. Patel. It was an updated list of persons who were restricted from access to the Mary Beckett Memorial Studio. Trina Halbrook's name was at the top. I went back to the editing bay. The clock was ticking. I had 1 week until the thesis screening. I sat there, in the dark, watching Maria's face on the monitor. She was talking about her garden in Guatemala. Her hands, which were worn and scarred from kitchen work, were folded in her lap. I was listening. I was really listening. I realized my hands weren't shaking. I wasn't checking my email every 5 seconds. The anonymous complaints, the fake email, Trina's desperate, clumsy attempts to break me. They felt small. They felt like noise. Trina's power had always been in the ruckus, in the shouting, in the manufactured drama. My power, I realized, was in the quiet of this room. It was in the footage. It was in the listening. I didn't need to fight her noise with more noise. I just needed to finish my work. I hit the export button. The trailer for Silent Hands was done. I uploaded it to the school's private video server. By the time I woke up the next morning, it had over 20,000 views from within the school and university community. The countdown had begun. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, 2 days before my thesis was scheduled to screen. Arthur Beckett's voice was dry on the phone, a crisp, papery sound that held no room for small talk. "Delaney, can you be at my office? In the annex? 3 o'clock. It was not a request. I arrived at 3. The Beckett Annex was not the high school. It was not my father's house. The lobby was silent, floored in a dark, cold marble that echoed the click of my boots. His office was on the top floor. Through the wide, thick-paned window, I could see the roof of Maple Ridge High below. A flat, gray expanse. The glass was so thick I could not hear the 3:15 bell ring. The room smelled of old leather, wood polish, and paper. Elise Grant was there, but she sat in a chair near the window, her hands folded over a closed portfolio. She was an observer today. She gave me a small, respectful nod. Arthur was at his desk. It was a dark, heavy piece of mahogany that looked like it had been there for 100 years. "Sit down," he said. He did not waste time. He slid a thin, leather-bound document across the desk. It was not a stack of papers. It was a single, formal, and clearly expensive portfolio. "This is an amendment to the Beckett Foundation's charter," he said, his voice even. "It establishes a new, localized fund, the Weston Fellowship's Maple Ridge Initiative. It is, in effect, a living trust, and it requires a local administrator." I looked at him, not understanding. "The position," he continued, "is to find, vet, and award microgrants to students in this district, students who fall through the cracks of larger scholarships, students who need a laptop, students who need a bus pass to get to an internship, students who need art supplies." He tapped a blank line at the bottom of the page with one long finger, the signature line. "I am offering you the position," he said. "It is a 3-year term, to start, renewable." My breath caught. "Me? I'm 22. I'm graduating in a week." "You are 22, he agreed, his voice flat. "You are a Weston Fellow, and you are Mary Beckett's daughter. Those are the only qualifications I require." He spelled it out, not as a gift, but as a set of responsibilities. It was not a check. It was authority. The fund would be capitalized with $20,000 a year for the next 3 years. I would have sole discretion over how it was dispersed. I would have an office, here, in the annex. "I am not giving you money, Delaney," he said, and his voice was so quiet I had to lean forward. "I am giving you the power to give money. I am giving you the responsibility to say yes to the right people, and the much harder responsibility of saying no. Anyone can have money. The real inheritance, the only one that matters, is the work of deciding what to do with it." He leaned back in his heavy leather chair. The late afternoon sun, low and winter weak, came through the window and caught the silver in his hair. He looked past me, out the window, at the school. "Your mother, Mary," he said, and his voice faltered. Just for a second. He cleared his throat. We had an old friendship. Your mother and I, as she grew older, it went beyond just father and daughter. We understood each other. She was the one who loved this valley. I just owned the buildings in it." He was silent for a moment, lost in a memory I couldn't access. "I bought her that first camera," he said, a rare, faint smile touching his lips. "A little 35mm, for her 13th birthday. She was furious." I blinked, startled. "Furious?" "Oh, yes," he said. "She threw it on her bed. She said, 'I don't want to just take pictures of things. I want to make things.' She said I didn't understand. She was right." He looked back at me, and his eyes were sharp, pulling me into the present. "It took her a year, but she picked it up, and she learned. She learned what He gestured to the document. "What I'm trying to teach you now. Your mother," he said, his voice clear, "wanted you to learn how to use a camera, how to use this power, this access, to illuminate other people, not to spend your whole life staring at your own flaws in the lens." A single tear slid down my cheek. It was not the hot, angry tear I'd felt in the principal's office. It was not the shaking, desperate tear of relief I'd felt when I won the scholarship. It was a slow, warm tear of trust. He was not giving me a reward for what I had survived. He was giving me a job. He was trusting me with his daughter's legacy. "Delaney?" A voice from the doorway. I turned. My father. He was standing there. He was wearing a pressed blue shirt I hadn't seen before. His hands were clean. His hair was combed. He looked nervous. He looked like a man reporting for a job. "Arthur, Mr. Beckett," he said, his voice formal. You asked me to be here, to witness the signing for the financial audit agreement." "Come in, Evan," Arthur said, his voice neutral. My father stepped into the room. It was the first time he had ever been in a place like this. He looked at the desk, at the leather chairs, at me. He saw the document. He saw the pen laid out beside it. He watched me. He watched as I picked up the heavy, expensive pen. He watched as my hand, steady and sure, signed my name on the line, Delaney Rhodes, Administrator. I watched my father understand. I watched it happen. Right in front of me. He looked at the contract. He looked at Arthur. He looked at me, his daughter, signing a legal document that gave me control over a fund larger than his yearly salary. He was realizing that inheritance was not the house he had almost lost. It was not a bank account. It was this. It was a set of principles. It was a responsibility you were trusted with. It was a name, and the work that went with it. For 10 years, he had witnessed my humiliation. Today, he was a legal witness to my empowerment. The next day, a package arrived at Maple Ridge High. It was a heavy rectangular object, delivered by a private courier. Mr. Corbett, in his new role as my enthusiastic ally, sent a school-wide email. Arthur Beckett had sent a letter to the school board, formally and publicly, naming the new studio. The letter was attached to the email for all to read. It was not the Beckett Media Lab. It was not the Weston Fellowship Studio. The email, and the heavy bronze plaque that was being installed at that very moment above the studio door, read, "The Mary Beckett Memorial Studio." My mother's name, carved in bronze, a permanent public fact. I was in that studio, her studio. Late that night, I was running the final color correction on silent hands. The screening was in less than 48 hours. My phone, sitting on the console, buzzed. An unknown number, a text message. "I saw the sign, the one for your mom." My blood went cold. I knew who it was. I did not reply. I waited. A minute later, another buzz. It's a good name." I kept my eyes on the screen, on Maria's face. My fingers did not move. A third buzz. This one had taken a long time. I could feel the hesitation, the typing and deleting, from miles away. "I know the Weston Fellowship has a high school category. The one you run now. I want to submit my short film for the microgrant. Mia." My thumbs hovered over the screen. I could have written so much. Are you kidding me? After what your mother did? After she tried to sabotage my entire future? But I looked at the name on the door. Illuminate other people. I set my phone down. I opened the browser on the editing suite's computer. I went to the new, official webpage for the Maple Ridge Initiative. I copied the URL. I picked up my phone and texted her back. It was a single, solitary line. The link to the official guidelines, the application portal, and the deadlines. I did not add, "Good luck." I did not add, "Of course." I did not add, "I'm so glad you're applying." I gave her the rules, the same rules every other kid in that high school would get. Fairness was the only gift I was obligated to give. The world in Maple Ridge had shifted, quietly. The disciplinary hearing for Trina was scheduled, but it almost didn't matter. Her tactics, her pressure, her web of favors. They had no ground left to stand on. Her friends at the Wired Bean and Carly's Closet were, I heard, suddenly and permanently busy. Her social currency, built on a pyramid of false sacrifices, was worthless. She was, I heard, simply at home, in a house where her husband now reviewed every single receipt, where he co-signed every check. She was isolated in the quiet. The story in town had changed. The gossip mill had a new narrative. It was no longer about the drama in the principal's office. It was about the local girl, the quiet Rhodes girl, the one who had won that huge fellowship, the one who was now running a scholarship fund named after her mother, Mary. They had stopped telling the story of the fight. They had started telling the story of my work. The disciplinary hearing was not held in a conference room. It was held in the Maple Ridge School District boardroom, a place of beige carpets, fluorescent lighting, and a heavy U-shaped table that felt designed to intimidate. It was a room, I thought, where budgets were cut and teachers were fired. It was a room for consequences. I was there, with Arthur and Elise Grant. We were not at the main table. We were in the observer chairs, to the side. At the main table were the board members, local dentists and real estate agents. At a small, sad table in the center sat Trina and my father. Ms. Patel and Mr. Corbett were near the front, as witnesses for the school. The mood was heavy, formal, and deeply, profoundly awkward. This was not a trial. It was an administrative procedure, which somehow made it feel colder. Mr. Corbett spoke first, outlining the events from his perspective, his voice full of a strained formality. He spoke of the security protocol breach and the unacceptable nature of the adult-on-adult conflict. Then, Ms. Patel was called. She was magnificent. She stood and read from her notebook, her voice a monotone. At 14:03, I observed the adult female, Mrs. Halbrook, escalate a verbal disagreement with the adult guest. Ms. Rhodes, at 14:04, Mrs. Halbrook used threatening language. Ungrateful little leech. At 14:05, Mrs. Halbrook advanced on Ms. Rhodes and raised her right hand in an open palm, backswing posture, indicating clear intent to make physical, disciplinary contact. A board member, a woman with sharp glasses, looked up. So, to be clear, Ms. Patel, she did not strike the girl. No, ma'am, Ms. Patel said, her voice flat. Contact was not made. My intervention was successful, as per my training. So, what are we really... The threat, however... Ms. Patel cut him off, her voice gaining a rare, sharp edge. Was credible. The environment was hostile. My action was necessary to de-escalate a situation that had a high probability of becoming physical. The safe room protocol was triggered by her action, not mine. She sat. The room was silent. Elise Grant was invited to speak next. On behalf of the affected guest, Ms. Rhodes, and the Beckett Foundation. She did not stand. She sat at her place and opened a simple file. I will be brief, she said, her voice easily filling the room. The board has my full, unedited video file of the incident, as provided by Mr. Noah Fields, and I trust you have reviewed it. The why of this incident is as important as the what. She did not bring up the credit cards. That was a family matter. This was about the school. The board also has, she continued, a copy of an email sent by Mrs. Halbrook to Pinecrest State University 2 weeks prior to the incident. An email, I will add, that contained factually untrue, defamatory statements, designed for the sole purpose of sabotaging Miss Rhodes's scholarship application. This was not a sudden burst of temper in a principal's office. This was the culmination of a calculated, multi-week campaign of interference. She let that hang in the air. The Beckett Foundation, Elise said, her voice turning to steel, is investing over $200,000 in the safety and future of this district in the name of Mary Beckett. We did so contingent on a new code of conduct. We are here today to see if this board has the moral and procedural will to enforce it. The Foundation's partnership is not with a building. Gentlemen, it is with a standard. We are watching to see if that standard is met. She closed the file. It was a threat, delivered with the serene calm of absolute power. Then, the board president, a local realtor, looked at my father. Mr. Rhodes, do you or your wife have a statement? This was it. My father stood up. He was wearing the same blue shirt. His hands, which were clean, were shaking so hard he gripped the back of his chair. My name is Evan Rhodes, he stammered. First, I want to apologize to Mr. Corbett, to Ms. Patel, to this board, for what happened, for my family, for the scene we caused. He took a deep breath. He looked at Trina, who was staring at the table. Then he looked at me. I was not a father that day, he said, his voice thick. For a long time, I haven't been. I have been a bystander in my own life. I let things get broken. I didn't. I didn't do my job to protect my daughter, to be a partner to my wife. I let the noise happen because I was a coward. The confession hung in the dead air. It was raw, and it was true. What? What Trina did? It was wrong, he said, the words costing him everything. It was inexcusable. I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to promise it will never happen again. My wife and I, he said, looking at the board, we've started family counseling to fix what's broken. I have taken over the family finances. I am an active partner, and I am an active father. What happened? It will not happen again. I give you my word, as a member of this town, as Mary Beckett's, as her widower. He sat down. He was shaking. The board president looked at Trina. Mrs. Halbrook? Trina did not move for a long time. She was pale. She looked like she hadn't slept. For the first time, she looked her age. The shiny was gone. She stood up. She did not look at me. She did not look at my father. She looked at the beige, acoustic-tiled wall. She started. Her voice was a cracked whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. I apologize, she said. My head snapped up. What I did in Mr. Corbett's office was wrong. There is no if. There is no but. It was wrong. She was looking at the board, her eyes glassy, but her voice was, for the first time in her life, completely, totally, and utterly clean. I am not, well, I was cornered, and I was threatened, and I lost control. I said things, and I did things that were unacceptable. She took a breath. I apologized to Mr. Corbett for disrespecting his office. I apologized to Ms. Patel for my behavior. Then she did it. She turned and looked at me. Her eyes were red. And I apologize to Delaney, she said. My name sounded like gravel in her mouth. You did not deserve that. You never, I am sorry. She sat down. She did not cry. She just sat. The boardroom was silent. There was nothing left to say. The president announced they would deliberate. We all filed out into the hallway, a strange, mismatched group, and waited. It took 12 minutes. We filed back in. The president read from a sheet of paper. The board finds that Mrs. Trina Halbrook did violate sections 4 and 6 of the District Code of Conduct. The evidence, the eyewitness testimony, the video, is clear. Trina closed her eyes. Therefore, the president continued, the board votes unanimously on the following consequences. 1. Mrs. Halbrook is hereby banned from all Maple Ridge High School properties and all district events for a period of 12 months, effective immediately. My father reached over and, for a moment, put his hand on hers. She did not pull away. 2. All communication from Mrs. Halbrook to the school regarding her daughter, Mia Halbrook, must be conducted via email, directed only to the main administrative office. Any violation of this order or any attempt at contact that is perceived as harassment by any party will result in the board seeking a permanent legal restraining order. This is your one and only warning. He put the paper down. This meeting is adjourned. It was over. We were filing out into the bright, cold hallway. My father was speaking quietly to Trina, who was just nodding, her face blank. Miss Rhodes? I turned. It was a man I didn't recognize, in a suit much nicer than Mr. Corbett's. He had a bright, professional smile. I'm David Hale. I'm the regional director for the Weston Fellowship, he said, shaking my hand. I wanted to be here today, and I wanted to tell you, I just got off the phone with the National Board. My stomach did a flip. Oh? We saw the trailer for Silent Hands, the one you uploaded to the university server. He smiled. The one Arthur forwarded to the entire board. Delaney, he said, his face alight. It's extraordinary. It's exactly the kind of work we exist to support, and the board we feel, that it needs to be seen. They've just approved an auxiliary impact grant, $10,000 for festival submission fees, and a full community distribution budget. I just stared. 10,000. Go tell your story, Ms. Rhodes, he said, patting my arm. The world is listening. I felt light. I turned, looking for Arthur, for my dad. And I saw Mia. She was standing at the far end of the hallway, by the doors to the parking lot. She was holding a single, black memory card in her hand. She had been here. She had waited. I walked toward her. She watched me come, her face pale, her eyes terrified. She looked like a cornered animal. I heard, she whispered, as I got close. About your film. The extra money. That's amazing. Thanks, Mia, I said. She held up the card. Her hand was shaking. This is the one I texted you about. My short film for the micro grant. She winced. It's not very good. I filmed it on my phone, and I edited it on the old computer in the library. She held it out to me, a physical offering. I wanted to see. I wanted to try again, the right way. I looked at the small, black piece of plastic. This was her application. This was her apology. This was her, trying to climb out of the wreckage her mother had made. I didn't take it. Her face fell. She thought I was rejecting her. The deadline, I said, my voice gentle, is Friday. On the website. The portal is triple blind. I don't see the names. I can't see the names. I just see the work. I smiled. A real one. Upload it by Friday, just like everyone else. She looked at the card, and then at me, and she understood. I wasn't her stepsister. I wasn't her enemy. I was the administrator, and I was, above all, fair. She nodded, a small, sharp nod. Okay, by Friday. She turned to go. At the door, she paused. Delaney? Yeah? Mom. She really is sorry. For all of it. She's different now. It's quiet. At the house. It's really quiet. And then she was gone. I turned. My father and Arthur were standing by the boardroom door. Arthur had his hand on my father's shoulder. It was not a hug. It was a bracing, a support. The door, Arthur was saying, his voice low, is always open, Evan, for any man who is willing to walk through it using the truth as his key. My father just nodded, his throat too thick to speak. The final scene. It's not the screening. It's not the award. It's this. It's a week later. The Mary Beckett Memorial Studio is silent. It's 9:00 at night. I am alone. My thesis is graded. My film is done. My degree is, for all intents and purposes, finished. I'm here, in my office. My office, as the administrator. And I'm hanging the first picture on the wall. It's not my fellowship certificate. It's not a still from my movie. It's not a picture of me and Arthur. It's a photograph I took during my first Weston workshop. It's a candid shot. In the foreground, out of focus, is the back of Mia's head, her pen flying across a notebook, and in the center, sharp and clear, are two other students, a boy and a girl, huddled over a camera, laughing. They are caught in the middle of a bright, sudden, perfect moment, the moment of creation. My journey, my revenge. It started in a cold, dark house, with a woman's voice telling me I was a leech. It started with a hand, raised in anger, and it ends here, in this bright, warm studio, my mother's studio, with me, hanging a picture of other people's light. My journey didn't end with me tearing Trina's world down. It ended with me building my own. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm so curious to know, where in the world are you listening from? Please drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you want to help this story reach more people, please hit that hype button to support us.